Hello guys, my name is Anna and I'm a Ukrainian, and I have decided I will vlog daily from my country Ukraine since the start of this awful war with Russia. And in my daily videos I try to update you on the important real life situations in my country Ukraine, and of course I'm always glad to answer your questions and to clarify some facts from our background, our history, our culture, or whatever interests you. And I'm very grateful for your subscriptions and for your comments and your questions, especially as they inspire my vlogs and they help me, I believe, attract attention to my country Ukraine, because as this war continues, more and more people, governments lose their interest and loosen their attention to war in Ukraine. And it is very important for us Ukrainians to feel this solidarity and to feel your support, starting from military aid and finishing from everyday conversations that are held in your offices, cafes, or elsewhere. Because, you know, Russian propaganda is extremely poisonous, and war does not take place on their territory. It destroys the infrastructure and lives of Ukrainian peoples every day. And it weakens us, and we have to win this war together with all the civilized world. That's why I believe it's extremely important to continue seeing a situation, war in Ukraine, as something totally wrong, and to be united, to stand united against Russia. And recently, having seen that Ukraine was really strong in the informational field, Russia tries to adjust their propaganda to a more normal type of messages in world media, and also they use lots of more or less positive figures, people who are treated as good Russians in the world. And you know, like in Ukraine we do have a joke that good Russians are dead Russians, but I do believe there are normal Russians, especially those who live abroad and who see how poisonous Putin's propaganda is. But in general, people like Ovsiannikova, the journalist that became very popular after her protest on one of the TV channels at the start of this war, or Russian oppositioner Navalny, are depicted as really good Russians. And I don't feel that way, and many people in Ukraine don't feel that way, and I want to explain you why. For example, today we have read an announcement that Interfax Ukraine wanted to organize a press conference of Ovsiannikova in Kyiv with her physical presence, I don't know, maybe online presence or her physical presence in Kyiv. And after her protest on the Первый канal of Russia during the news report, she became extremely famous. And even our president reacted, and newspapers all over the world gave her the first pages, and she received lots of invitations from the world media. And it seems to me she agreed to work with Die Welt, and also many prizes, journalist prizes were given to her. And it's all like kind of very weird. I do understand that protesting in Russia is not simple, but it is never simple. You know, in Ukraine it's not simple, and fighting a war is not simple at all. But her protest looks really weird because she worked for a decade on one of the top Russian propaganda channels, and she did work as an editor, not just a journalist, a reporter. And she had all the chances to quit, but she continued working. And it looks weird because we had like 8 years of war with Russia and other things, but it was okay for her, and her husband works for Russia today. So it all looks very weird how quickly she switched her vision on the situation, how quickly she became popular, and that she managed to escape even Putin's regime. So it quite might be that she is a tool of a softer way of Russian propaganda. When you choose someone who looks like a true Democrat, and then a person starts spreading typical Russian propaganda messages, but the ones adapted for the Western audience. For example, they will not say that all Ukrainians are Nazis, that all Ukrainians must be killed, but they will say that, and Ovsiannikova actually says that we are brothers, countries that are brothers, and there are no countries brothers, especially if you have an abusive neighbor like Russia. And it is a totally Russian propaganda message that Ukraine and Russia are brothers, and they can never live separately, and they have to find this understanding and to continue living a family life. No, family life is impossible. It is always impossible between independent countries, I believe. But after this war, it goes without saying that it is even more impossible than anything else on this planet. So it is very likely that clever Russian propagandists choose figures that are more acceptable or respected or even liked in the West, and they try spreading softer messages of Russia propaganda via their channels. And it's quite likely that Ovsiannikova is exactly the same. And I'm really happy that her press conference did not take place in Kyiv because of the reaction of Ukrainian people who totally didn't like the idea. Another thing, and I often come across this name in the comments to my videos, is Navalny, who is treated as the top oppositioner in Russia, and I have to agree that perhaps he is the most recognizable one and the most likely one to substitute Putin, for example. But I do like this question in Ukraine. It's a very popular quote. I don't remember whose quote is that Russian democracy and Russian Democrats typically are finished when you ask them a question about Ukraine. So something like that can describe Navalny very well, because when asked about the annexation of Crimea, he always supported the idea that it's okay and Crimea is the part of Russia. And this is the first step of Ukrainian-Russian war, the annexation of Crimea. And there are other very weird answers of Navalny when he starts talking about Ukraine. So in general, I would say that the problem with Ruski Mir, the problem with Russian attitude to Ukraine is really serious, and it has a kind of different levels. Of course, the worst one is the vision of Putin, Shoigu, and others who see Ukraine just as the territory of Russia, who hate Ukrainians, who actually commit genocide over Ukrainians and kill people just because they are Ukrainians. But there are other Russians who are often treated as good Russians, and these are people who disrespect, who are very chauvinistic, but they don't want to kill Ukrainians. They are looking for other ways, and I think they also see Ukraine as a kind of Belarus that must join Russian world and so on. So this Russian chauvinism is a very great problem that exists in Russian society for centuries. And I do believe, once again, many of you ask me, how quickly can we become more neutral to Russia? Is it possible for us to remain in normal relations? When will this normal relations return? And I think that it would be wise to stay away from Russia even after we win, even after Putin's regime fall, for a couple of centuries. Because the illness, that chauvinistic sickness of Russia is really strong. And not only towards Ukraine, but also other countries that once were unhappy to be a part of Soviet Union or Russian Empire. And I do believe that the normal future of Russia and other countries that will appear on its territory is possible only after they realize that the reconstruction of Russian Empire is impossible. So when you come across a good Russian, I'm not saying they are totally impossible, but always ask them a question about Ukraine, about our territorial sovereignty, about freedom, about independence of other, let's say, post-Soviet countries. And this is a very good test to see with whom you are actually talking. Thank you once again for your support. Thank you once again for standing with Ukraine, for your questions and for your subscriptions. They really make me happy. Slava Ukraini!